Oh, it doesn't matter.
No, because this is how I close something. Look, yeah, I shut it. It's not open anymore. Right?
Okay, Megan, I've got 7 o'clock. Are we ready?
Live stream and recording are started.
All right, great. Good evening to everyone present. This is a Planning Commission Public Rezoning Information Meeting. Present at this evening's meeting are Jeremiah Weddle, Denny Reeder, David Klein, BJ Getz, Jeff Sembler, Randy Wagner, and I am Clint Wiley. The purpose of this meeting is to consider rezoning applications submitted to the Washington County Department of Planning and Zoning. This meeting will be conducted as follows. Staff will present a summary of the application. The applicant will have 15 minutes for his or her presentation. The Planning Commission members will have the opportunity to ask questions of the staff and or the applicant. Citizens will be given the opportunity for comment. Individuals will be given 3 minutes to speak. One representative of a group or organization will be given 5 minutes to speak. The applicant will be given 5 minutes for rebuttal. The Planning Commission will review all facts and information received during the meeting and make its recommendation at a later date to the Board of County Commissioners. The Board of County Commissioners will then hold a rezoning public hearing. The date of the County Commissioners' public hearing is not known at this time. It will be advertised in the local newspapers' legal ads 14 days before the hearing, and again, 7 days before the hearing, as well as posted on the county's website. At the end of the County Commissioners' public hearing, the comment period will close. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded. Please silence all electronic devices, and for the sake of the fact that this is a Zoom meeting, please remain muted if at all possible until your time to speak. The first item under our rezoning public information meeting this evening is Sharpsburg Pike Holdings, LLC. This is RZ-21-005. Presentation of additional information for the proposed map amendment of 9.92 acres of property located at 10319 Sharpsburg Pike from highway interchange to mixed-use residential and commercial. And the planner this evening for this is Travis Allen. Good evening, Travis.
Good evening, everyone. This is Travis Allen, Comprehensive Planner with the Department of Planning and Zoning. As mentioned, we are bringing back the Sharpsburg Pike rezoning that you guys heard a few months ago. Again, for the reason for this is at the November 30th public hearing of the Board of County Commissioners, the applicant did submit additional information concerning their plan to address school capacity under the requirements of the county's adequate public facilities ordinance. This was information that was not available during the public information meeting for the Planning Commission or for the public during that meeting. Therefore, the Board of County Commissioners remanded this application back to the Planning Commission for their additional review and as well as providing opportunity for further public comment. We would remind the Planning Commission that all other aspects of this application remain the same in terms of the staff report, in terms of other questions that were brought up during the last public information meeting. So larger concerns such as the ability to connect to public water, that kind of thing all remain the same. We would also remind you that the current information was not something that was provided to outside agencies when they reviewed and commented on this application. So just keep that in mind when you're making your recommendation here tonight. But with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to the applicant.
Okay, great. Thank you, Travis. Is there somebody here from the applicant from Sharpsburg Pike Holdings?
Good evening, Commissioner Wiley. This is Zachary Kiefer on behalf of the applicant. Also with me tonight is Trevor Frederick.
Okay, great. Thanks, Zach. Go right ahead.
Sure. As Travis laid out, everything is pretty much the same from the last time we were before the Planning Commission. No change in density, unit numbers, anything like that. But as you'll recall, what we focused on a lot during that first public meeting and subsequently at the commissioners' public hearing was the the APFO and the adequacy of the schools. So the schools affecting this development are South Hagerstown High School, E. Russell Hicks, excuse me, and Rockland Woods Elementary. Based on the concerns, and of course, we're not disputing the fact that as the numbers are as they are right now, that all three of those schools are beyond adequate, almost to the point where the APFO mitigation fee isn't available to the developer. With that in mind, and of course, you'll remember that the recommendation of the Planning Commission was a denial based on the inadequacy of the schools and the perceived lack of a plan to address that. So we sort of huddled back up, talked with the developer, and based out of that meeting and discussions with the developer, we sent the Planning Commission the October 25th letter, essentially stating that if the inadequacy remained after the zoning issues were resolved, and if we're still granted permission or zoning permission and still working on the site plan and final plat approval, if the adequacy, the APFO issue still wasn't resolved, the developer is willing to switch this over to an age-restricted community. The Planning Commission will remember that if there is that 55 plus designation, that exempts the development from any APFO adequacy concerns when it comes to school capacity and things like that. So with that, we presented the similar information in an October 29th letter to the Board of County Commissioners, and then at the hearing as well, stating that we're willing to go age restricted if that resolves the APFO school capacity issues. The Board of County Commissioners, they wanted to hear from the Planning Commission and get this back in front of them too. So, really that's all that's changed. Again, this isn't just sort of a blanket or broad, vague statement by the developer. These restrictions show up on the final plat and in any subsequent declaration of covenants. I mean, this, it's just like any other portion of a plat restriction, of a density restriction. It's something that the developer has to abide by. So the development process for the MXC is a little bit of a time crunch. The developer just can't sit on the approval and forever. They have to kind of move things along. So, granted, if the Board of Education and redistricting doesn't come up, it looks like that the age restriction is the way to go. So again, that'll be policed by the county and the code enforcement. There's also going to be, whether it ends up being sort of an HOA or condo association deal or management company, that's sort of your enforcement mechanism and your oversight personnel as far as these restrictions go. So the developer intends to stick with them and certainly abide by them. And then going back to the Court of Special Appeals case that deals with it, and specifically with the application and addressing the APFO issues in Washington County, we believe that we present a reasonable solution. It's certainly workable. It's certainly available to us as far as resolving the APFO. And what we're here tonight and hope ultimately to get out of this is based on the Planning Commission's recommendation of denial based on the APFO inadequacy issues, that the Planning Commission would be willing to reverse once they've reviewed the materials and are comfortable with the fact that we are certainly serious about putting the age restriction on the development. So with that, Trevor, certainly let me, if you have
Yeah, Zach, I have a quick question for you, please. Sure. At what stage in the development would the age restriction be determined? Whether or not you'd be implementing 55 or older age restriction. What point in this would you determine that?
Prior to final site plan approval, final plat approval, Again, of course, that's with this board, that's with the planning commission. So
Mhm, right.
you would see a preliminary site plan, I think, from Trevor, and within the notes of that site plan or that plat, it would include the restriction as within the notes. Trevor, is that, am I speaking out of turn there?
No, that's correct. Within the site plan that's submitted and filed with Washington County, we would designate the age restriction within that, and that would coincide with the site plan and final plat approval process.
Okay, thanks. I'm sorry to interrupt your presentation. Go right ahead, Trevor.
Now, just following up on what Zach has already spoke regarding the design and layout, nothing has changed since the original application that came in. As he referenced, the only change is adding that designation if we need to at that time.
Hey, Trevor or Zach, this is Randy Wagner. Just a couple quick questions. I think you explained it pretty well, but they're all going to be age restricted. Is that correct? First thing.
Yes.
And would that, and if you have a HOA or it'll be recorded in covenants, the age restriction, that means somebody has to be, would that go as far as to say, I think it's going to be, somebody has to be 55 buying it, nobody under the age of 18 living there permanently. Is that correct or wrong?
Generally, I think that's correct. Yes, it's obviously throughout the marketing process, it's going to be marketed to 55 and plus. And I believe as far as whether it's again sort of the leasing, the seller's agent or the HOA, they're going to be involved with enforcing those covenants and making sure that.
But I guess the question though, what I've been familiar with, it does have a clause that say, I think the concern is because they're 55 is because of schools and other reasons. So I think my concern, not concern as much as clarification, would be permanently residing, nobody under 18. I think we probably would like to clarify that, I would think. And would they be recorded in the deed too as a age restricted, or would that just be on covenants?
I can't speak to the specific title companies, but generally, I would expect to see at least some reference to the recorded covenants in any deed. Randy, it's sort of one of those being clauses or saving and accepting that
Right.
that generally kind of says, you're taking the fee simple ownership in this property subject to the
Right.
of covenants.
Hey, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Randy. Any other members have questions for the applicant? No further questions for the applicant at this time. Okay, we do have one member of the public who is pre-signed up to speak, and that is Anna Marie Wise. Ms. Wise, are you available to speak? You have 3 minutes. You may need to unmute. Ma'am. Ms. Wise, I see that you're present. Would you still like to speak?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay,
Go right ahead.
great.
You've got 3
Sorry
minutes.
about that. I was trying to get it to unmute. But anyway, I just have some questions also. I mean, as far as ever getting anything other than over 55 there because of the schools, I mean, that's so far out. I don't think they could ever really plan on that ever happening because of all the additional building that's already going on here. But
1
also,
minute remaining.
I'm sorry, even with 55 and over, this is such a small space. I mean, what kind of, what are these people going to do there? It's not like you can build a tot lot or something there. And it's not, they're surrounded by all commercial. Everything out front will be commercial. Everything there is already commercial. On the other side of Poffenburg is all going to be commercial. I just don't understand how they're going to plop down a senior living apartments there in the middle of all that. It's just crazy. So that's just my my thought on that.
Okay, well, great. Thank you. I appreciate your input. I know you were the only person that had pre-signed up to speak on this rezoning case this evening. Is there anybody else who is present who did not pre-sign up but would wish to speak?
Hey, Clint, it's Dave.
Hey, Dave.
Not to speak, but is there an expectation we're going to vote on this tonight?
There would be the opportunity for us to have discussion and make an action on this. However, if we would like more time, then we certainly could bring this back at our next meeting.
Yeah, I will not vote on this tonight. I can tell
Okay.
you after I sit and speak with the county attorney about some things.
All right. Well, and that's certainly fine. Let's go ahead and continue for a second the remainder of the hearing, because the applicant does have an opportunity for rebuttal. I just do want to make sure, though, first, that there's nobody else from the public who wished to speak this evening. I don't believe there is. So, Zach, that does give you an opportunity for a 5-minute rebuttal if you have anything you'd like to add.
Thanks, Clint. I don't have anything to add at this time. Trevor, do you have anything else for the Planning Commission?
No, I do not.
All right. Well, thank you, guys.
Thanks.
So I was going to say, we heard Dave Klein say that he would prefer to defer action until our next meeting, and typically that is if a member of the Planning Commission desires that, we normally try to accommodate that. I would like to make sure, though, that other members of the commission are comfortable with that.
Hey, it's Randy again. What's the critical time period on this?
Well, I don't know that there necessarily is one. This is back before us now, and then after we've made a recommendation to the county commissioners, then you would need to post it, schedule it and post it, and it would need to be posted 14 days before the hearing, and then you're advertised 14 days before the hearing, and then another 7 days before. So, I think you're still looking at a comfortable timeline on this. So, I don't know of anything that would make this more urgent, but I do think that we ought to allow Planning Commission members to spend the time that they feel they need within reason to gather their information and thoughts prior to making a recommendation to the county.
Let me expand on my concerns. If the developer had come originally and said, we want to put a nursing home there, that would be one thing. From the beginning, there was an intent to put something there that's clearly, typically would be age restricted. And that didn't happen. So we know that there was an inclination to put apartments for anybody. And changing to age restriction is okay. That may solve the problem, but then again, it may not. And my concern is if we make a recommendation and the county commissioners change the zoning, then the zoning is changed. And it's not that I don't believe whatever a developer tells me, but I'd like to hear it from an outside source. I'm concerned about enforcement of the restrictions. Not that I wouldn't trust an HOA to enforce the restrictions, but I want to know what the county's capacity to enforce restrictions, what that capacity is. I want to know more about that, because what has typically happened is developers come in and they tell us they're going to do something. And, a couple of years later, they say, hey, that just doesn't work for us anymore. We're going to do something else. And maybe they tell us, and maybe they just do it, and that's just how it is. But I want to have a discussion with the county attorney about this before I make a vote, like either for or against. I just feel uncomfortable and I feel like I'm being rushed in to make a vote on this tonight. They came and made a long proposal about doing apartments, and then all of a sudden it's a quick change, and it's like, okay, we'll do this to get what we want, and then maybe later it won't be so. And I want to make sure that restrictions can be put in place and enforced, and that take care of that. That's all.
Okay, certainly can understand and appreciate your position. I'm sorry.
This is Denny. I'm with Dave, waiting
Okay.
another month. Thank you.
All right, and that's what I'm really looking for. I just want to make sure there's a consensus. It seems like we probably would be okay with that. BJ, Jeff, how do you guys
I'm
feel
good
about
with
this?
it. This is Jeff. I'm good with it.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm good.
Jeremiah.
I agree.
Okay, so that's what we'll do then. We will defer discussion and action on this until our next meeting. So that includes that case RZ-21-005. Next on our agenda this evening is 19817 Beaver Creek LLC. This is RZ-21-007. There's a proposed rezoning of 131.28 acres of property located at 19817 Beaver Creek Road and along the west side of Dual Highway. The current zoning is residential multifamily, and the proposed zoning is highway interchange. And again, Travis is the planner. Good evening, Travis, and welcome back.
All right, good evening again. Once again, this is Travis Allen, Comprehensive Planner at the Department of Planning and Zoning. So the applicant 19817 Beaver Creek LLC is requesting to change the existing residential multifamily zoning to highway interchange covering two parcels, 131.28 acres along Beaver Creek Road. As you can see there from the image, the existing condition of this parcel, these two parcels, you have the smaller of the two, which is improved with an existing residential structure at 19817 Beaver Creek Road. Then you have the much larger parcel surrounding it, parcel 51, which as you can see is mostly used for agricultural purposes, but also contains woodlands and a pretty substantial amount of floodplain. An intermittent stream, Landis Spring Branch, does flow through that eastern half of the property over there. In piecemeal rezoning cases, the local legislative body is tasked with presenting findings of fact based upon criteria that are defined in the zoning ordinance in Article 27.3. They include criteria such as the population change in the district, the availability of public facilities, present and future transportation patterns, the compatibility with existing and proposed development, the relationship to the comprehensive plan, and evidence as to whether there's been a change in the character of the neighborhood since the time of the last comprehensive zoning plan. In this case, that would be the 2012 urban growth area rezoning, or a mistake in applying the zoning at that same time in 2012. A lot of these criteria are, first of all, covered in the staff report, so I'm not going to hit all of them here tonight in my introduction. And as well, some of these pieces of information are a little bit more relevant to a change in the character of the neighborhood case, but the applicant is claiming mistake in this case. So I'm going to skip ahead in terms of these criteria straight to the availability of public facilities, first of all. In terms of the availability of public water and sewer to this site, in the county's water and sewer plan, this site is given both the W5 and S5 designation for water and sewer, which means long-term planned service, and that those services are not immediately available to the site. In terms of water, the city of Hagerstown is the provider, and the site is outside of the city's medium range growth area, so they would only be able to access well water at this time. Sewer, again, is a similar thing. It would eventually be provided by the county, but is not immediately available presently, so they would have to rely on septic systems at the present time. Skipping ahead then to compatibility with existing proposed development. What you can see on your screen now there is the zoning in the vicinity of this site, and I-70 kind of forms a good dividing line to look at the differences in zoning within the vicinity of this proposed rezoning. North of I-70, you have a mixture of different residential zoning classifications at various densities, You also have a couple of small HI districts and a lot of land that either falls within the town of Funkstown or the city of Hagerstown. South of I-70, you can obviously see that parcel size increases. You have a lot of ag rural zoning, HI around the interchange itself, and then some residential urban to the west. Looking next in terms of land use, you can go to the next one, Megan. In this vicinity, particularly along Beaver Creek Road, the stretch that we're talking about here tonight, historically that area would have been primarily farmland or woodland or single-family residential uses. However, just recently we have had a couple of commercial businesses pop up along this stretch of Beaver Creek Road. You can see Vinnie's Truck Repair and Towing on the screen. US Lawns is also opened along this stretch, so there has been a small amount of commercial development more recently. You of course have the auto dealerships around the interchange, some low-intensity commercial in this stretch of US 40, and then a lot of ag lands and low-density housing a bit further away from the interchange. The applicant is proposing the highway interchange zoning for this rezoning. The zoning ordinance defines that district as being intended to provide suitable locations for commercial activities or light industrial land uses that serve highway travelers, provide goods and services to a regional population, or provide for uses that have a need to be located near the interstate highway system for various purposes. In terms of the relationship to the comprehensive plan, the 2002 comprehensive plan's land use plan designation for this property in this area was low density residential. That policy area is the main transitional classification from the urban to the rural area and is primarily associated with single family development. The crux, of course, of these piecemeal rezoning cases is, however, the change or mistake rule. So a demonstration by the applicant as to whether there's either been a substantial change in the character of the neighborhood since the last comprehensive zoning plan. Again, that's the 2012 urban growth area rezoning, or a mistake in the zoning made at that same time. Once again, the applicant in their justification statement is claiming that a mistake was made in 2012. We remind the Planning Commission that there is a strong presumption that the current zoning is correct. The applicant does bear the burden of proof, but proof, even if offered by the applicant, doesn't require the body to approve or recommend approval of the rezoning. In mistake cases, the applicant should be offering evidence that the local legislative body did one of the following in making their error. That they failed to take into account projects or trends probable of fruition, made decisions based upon erroneous information, used facts that later proved to be incorrect, couldn't have foreseen events that have occurred in the time since, or ignored facts and evidence at the time of zoning application. So any of those leading to the mistake. In this case, again, the applicant is claiming that there was a mistake. In their justification statement, they assert that one of the principal mistakes was that these properties cannot meet the requirement of the residential multifamily zoning district to be served by public water and sewer service, because as we mentioned, water and sewer service is not currently available to the parcel. To a lesser extent, in their justification statement, they also make note that similarly situated parcels in the vicinity that are within the county's urban growth area, but outside of the city's medium range growth area, were zoned to HI in 2012. So just to touch on each of those arguments briefly before we turn things over to the applicant. Again, in terms of water and sewer service, as you can see in the slide put up before you now, once again, these properties are outside of the medium range growth area for the city of Hagerstown. That has always been the case, and that has not changed in the city's update of its comprehensive plan, most recently in 2018, but has been consistently the case that these parcels are outside of the MRGA. So you can see a couple of small realignments nearby, but again, these parcels have always been outside of the MRGA and do not have immediate access to public water, especially. We would also point out that the requirements to connect to public water and sewer were identical for either an HI or an RM zoning classification in 2012. We also would point out, however, that that is at least potentially a requirement that can be waived by the Planning Commission with input from the Health Department. So ideally you do connect if it's available, but it's at least theoretically possible that that requirement can be waived. Looking next at the assertion of zoning changes in 2012, there you see a zoning comparison between what we have currently, as you saw before, and then what it was prior to the urban growth area rezoning in 2012. As you can see, the property was previously zoned HI2. That zoning classification was intended to serve as a transitional zone in between the HI1 zones that you can see were closer to the interchange itself and the nearby residential areas. It was a bit of a grab bag of a zoning area, zoning district. It allowed low intensity business uses, industrial uses, and a range of different residential development at varying densities, so a wide range of permitted uses. That HI2 district did not require connection to public water and sewer, but it did allow for higher density development if it was available at that time. The residential multifamily zoning that is applied to the property currently was primarily put there as a result of a recommendation by the Urban Growth Area Advisory Committee that was convened by the Board of County Commissioners to study various issues related to the 2012 comprehensive rezoning. They felt that this would be a place where they could potentially facilitate additional opportunities for multifamily housing development in the county. So I think that was probably the driving force behind applying RM at that time. We'd like to make note of the fact that at that same time, staff was recommending residential transition for these same parcels, a low density residential zoning classification. That recommendation of staff in 2012 would have been more in line with the 2012 comprehensive plans recommendation, probably better account for some of the water and sewer limitations. But we would also mention too that residential transition also does require a connection to public water and sewer as well. But as we stated for the RM and HI district, the Planning Commission at least potentially has the ability to waive that requirement. So essentially the water and sewer requirements were the same for each of these three potential choices, RM, RT, or HI in 2012. You do see between the 2012 zoning and then the current zoning that some parcels in the vicinity were indeed rezoned HI. Hard to say why exactly, but you know, we can sort of surmise that the Board of County Commissioners was splitting the difference with some of these similarly situated parcels in that, you know, some were rezoned to RM to facilitate that opportunity, while others accounted greater for the neighborhood that this is being zoned at in terms of applying the HI zoning to some of the other parcels in the vicinity. So I think they kind of split the difference with what they were doing with some of these neighboring parcels at that time. So to wrap things up here, again, the water and sewer requirements were identical for each of these three potential choices in 2012, RM, RT, or HI. All the connections, all these districts did require connection to public water and sewer, but at least potentially allowed that requirement to be waived. Again, since no public water or sewer service is planned in that area, it was both in 2012 and is now presently ultimately a bit of a judgment call as to which of these zoning classifications can most feasibly be developed on a well and septic system. Admittedly, RM can would most certainly run into problems being developed in well and septic due to all the infrastructure upgrades that would be required, such as roads. The school district is already over capacity in that area, so RM would be difficult to achieve, most certainly. However, the proposed HI would also run into similar issues with some of the more intense permitted uses within that district. but we do concede that some less intensive uses that are permitted within the HI district may again at least be theoretically possible to do on well and septic. We reiterate the fact that neither RM nor HI is consistent with the current comprehensive plan's recommendation, and that water and sewer is not likely to be extended to this site in the foreseeable future. Finally, we have received 4 public comments, all of which were opposed to this rezoning, primarily referencing the capacity of Beaver Creek Road to handle new traffic, and as well as other spillover effects from commercial uses that could be developed at the site, such as from a warehouse. It was also pointed out in one of the public comments that the Gaver Meadows development in the immediate vicinity in the town of Funkstown is not far from coming online, so that development will be generating traffic onto this stretch of Beaver Creek Road as well too. So with that, I will turn things over to the applicant.
Okay, thank you, Travis. Mr. Watts?
Thank you, Mr. Wiley. My name is William C. Wantz. My office address is 123 West Washington Street in Hagerstown. I'm an attorney representing 19817 Beaver Creek Road, LLC, a Maryland limited liability company. Is my audio sufficiently loud that everyone can hear me?
Yes, it is. Go ahead and continue.
Thank you. I'd first like to as a formality, introduce the application and the memorandum filed last week into the record. With the application was a justification statement addressing the applicable Maryland law of the theory of mistake. And the key area of interest in the memorandum is that over the passage of time, assumptions made at the time of the last comprehensive zoning can prove to be inaccurate. In this case, it would be the assumption which has to underlie the RM zoning classification that RM, of course, is to be served by public water and sewer, and there had to be some sort of an assumption that eventually that would be extended by the city, and that with the passage of time has not come to fruition. With me this evening are Josh Seawald. Mr. Seawald is a professional engineer licensed in Maryland and several other states, and he's been working with the applicant on feasibility issues and concepts that would be compatible with the neighborhood and the HI zoning classification requested. Mike Nalepa of Street Traffic, you're probably familiar with Mr. Nalepa. He's here to address traffic accommodation issues. Their presentations are expected to lend support to a finding that the property is suitable for HI development, that HI zoning is logical and appropriate for the site, and that there is access to and from the site and the I-70 interchange appropriate to support several types of non-residential HI development. The applicant is a contract purchaser of the 130 plus acre site, consisting of a 1.8 acre parcel improved by an existing home, the remainder largely in agriculture. Both parcels are currently zoned RM. They are in the initial or feasibility stage of potential consideration and possible purchase of the property. And the history of their interest in the property is interesting to note. Last summer, initially, the applicant became interested in the property as a potential site for multifamily residential development due to its size and its zoning classification. However, in the course of our due diligence, the city was consulted, and in July, City Planning Director Kathy Marr was consulted about the availability of city water and sewer service for a multifamily residential project. Kathy's detailed response is found as attachment A to the memorandum filed on behalf of the applicant last week, and makes it clear that the extension of city utilities to enable any sort of multifamily residential development will not occur anytime in the foreseeable future. Notably, in her long explanation, she commented on these points. First, she said, we know from our own analysis that we do not have enough water and wastewater capacity to serve the full build out of the city's MRGA. So certainly not the county's urban growth area. Our MRGA boundary was set based on an assumption that we could serve the projected demand in that area over the next 20 years. Next, she indicated that in order to do the upgrades to expand the MRGA, to quote her, the city would need an extremely large sum of money to spend on upgrades, treatment facilities, line replacement, and so forth. Finally, she said that state requirements limit the city's abilities on the wastewater side, and funding needs limit the city's abilities on the water side as chief issues. So there's little doubt that those utilities won't be available to the property in the foreseeable future to support any sort of multifamily residential development. So the applicant began exploring non-residential uses of the property with a focus on uses that would take advantage of the site's excellent accessibility to Interstate 70 at the dual highway Cloverleaf interchange. A legal analysis was undertaken into the potential of rezoning the property for a use in the area of the interchange not requiring a high number of EDUs characteristic of multifamily residential development. We had a very productive meeting with Jill Baker in June. So far, the investigation looks positive. I would ask that you consider not only our presentation this evening, but give thorough consideration to our justification statement and the memorandum filed following circulation of the planning staff report. In the limited time I have for hearing presentation, I'd like to address two questions. First, for what reason should the RM zoning classification be retained? We find no reason to retain that erroneous classification. Second, in comparison to that RM classification, if the property is allowed to be zoned HI, would that zoning be comparatively more logical and appropriate than the existing RM zoning? Some of the topics addressed in the staff report and presentation this evening are addressed in the memorandum provided last week, which you should have this evening. Most notably, if you look at the purpose of the RM district and what the commissioners doubtless had in mind when they established the RM zone for the property, is this statement of purpose in the RM district regulations of the zoning ordinance. The purpose of the residential multifamily district is to provide appropriate locations for apartments, condominiums, and townhouses, and other types of multifamily buildings in the urban areas of the county at a maximum density of 12 dwelling units per acre. This would require availability of utilities, which are unavailable. By the way, as Travis noted, it would require school adequacy, which is not a factor in the types of commercial uses envisioned in the HI classification. It's our position this evening that the property is much better fit in the HI zone than in the RM zone, given the limitations involved in planning, funding, or building residential communities on well and septic. Scattered low housing development is the earmark of sprawl development, which all of our planning visions and policies in Maryland are designed to prevent. We have two cloverleaf interchanges in Washington County, the one we're considering here and the one at halfway near I-70 and I-81. There won't be any new interchanges for quite a while. We should develop the interchanges we have wisely and thoughtfully. It must be presumed that when the RM zone was applied to this land, the local legislative body had some optimism that the site would be served by city water and sewer. The first MRGA was established by the city in 2008. The tier legislation at the state level was not enacted until 2012, the same year in which the HI2 zones were eliminated and the RM zones were ordained in their place for some areas, even areas adjacent to interchange highways. Highway facilities. Some of the former HI2 zones had existing access to public utilities. The dual highway interchange area did not on the south side. The most that can be said for the dual highway interchange was that the city and county could find a way to extend utilities somehow to support RM development. It did not occur. In taking into consideration the factors relevant to a rezoning, the adjacent land uses should be taken into consideration. I'd like to describe the uses in the RM zone currently across from the undeveloped rezoning site along Beaver Creek Road. At the corner is a billboard site recently purchased by Kegerice. Next are 4 single-family homes built between 1936 and 1953, according to SDAT records, which predated both the interstate highway system planned and implemented under the Eisenhower administration and predated county zoning. Next is a new commercial structure, one of the 2 uses that Travis mentioned, built in 2020, a facility occupied by U.S. Lawns and Vinnie's repair service just a little way down the road. Given the acreage of the Agrimart tract, the subject property, it offers availability of ample land for wide buffers and vegetative screening on all sides for any use under the HI zoning district, which may be purposed, to which it may be purposed. So I'd like to turn it over to Josh Seawald to explain what we have learned in our analysis of the property and how it is feasible and well suited to some of the uses allowed in the HI zone, and whether those uses are feasible for the site, such that the proposed uses are the most logical and appropriate. I would just comment that warehouses are one of several uses that might be established there. There are others. There are no specific indications of how the property may be used, but its potential, given its proximity to the interstate, is a very positive and interesting factor. We've been using the concept of a warehouse to demonstrate how one of those uses could certainly be accommodated, requiring much lower number of EDUs than any of the residential uses allowed in the RM. After that, we hear from Mike Nalepa about the roads between the subject site and the interstate ramps. And so I'd like to turn it over to Josh, let him introduce himself, state briefly his qualifications, and tell you what he's found out about the site. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wonk. Can everybody hear me okay?
We can. There's a 15-minute limit to the presentation, so we can be brief. I would greatly appreciate it.
Certainly. Well, what's our timing left? Approximately.
Yeah, I don't have track of that, Megan. You have
Okay.
that, but I know we don't have.
That's not a problem. I'll begin. So my name is Josh Seawald, S-E-W-A-L-D. I'm from Dynamic Engineering Consultants. We are a professional engineering firm hired by the applicant to evaluate this property for potential development. Mr. Wantz gave a nice history of the project and how we've been on this site for almost a year at this point, evaluating the different options that we can provide for development. And the applicant was interested in high density residential because the property is a nice property. It's 130 acres. We have great frontage along Beaver Creek Road and Route 40 and very close proximity to the interchange with 70. Dynamic Engineering has reviewed the property in various ways, assisted in preparation of the survey, done utility research, and other things that go into engineering and land development services. One of the main reasons for the request of the rezoning is simply the flexibility that the HI zone provides. The RM zone is limited to essentially high density residential. There are certainly some other uses that are permitted within there, but all of our neighbors are within the HI zone, and the rezoning of this property to HI simply provides flexibility. There are dozens and dozens of permitted uses within the HI zone. One of them, as Mr. Wantz discussed, was warehouses, but there are also low intense retail associated with that, self-storage facilities, all different types of uses that don't necessarily need such a high demand for water and sewer that, as we keep hearing, is not coming down the road anytime soon. So essentially the goal of the applicant in hiring the team that is here before you to make this presentation is to hopefully convince the planning commission and eventually the county commissioners that this is not a situation where we are looking at spot zoning. All of our neighbors around us are in that HI due to the adequate size of the property of 130 acres and great frontage we have on Beaver Creek Road and 40, that we can provide some of those maybe improvements that the public has some concerns and questions on. We could provide dedication of our property along Beaver Creek to widen the roadway. That interchange of Beaver Creek with 40 with a decent enough size development could afford possibly a traffic signal. And the uses that are listed with the HI zone could be supported through well or septic instead of worrying about additional capacity at a later date. So it's in my professional opinion that based on the property size, the limited environmental features that are associated in the middle of the site, and the fact that there is still well over 100 acres of upland usable property, that this site was designed and left to ensure that we could provide some of those uses that will better serve the area as well as Route 40 and Route 70. I know one of the uses that was contemplated was warehouse, and that's just due to the open farm field nature and the great access to Route 70. But that does not mean that the applicant has not contemplated some lower intense retail that are maybe much closer towards the intersection of Beaver Creek and Route 40. I am trying to move quickly just due to the limitation. So Mr. Wants, if there's anything that I missed that you want me to just hit up right before we move over to Mr. Nalepa, please let me know.
Well, let's go straight to Mike Nalepa.
Okay.
Hey, yeah, for the record, my name's Mike Nalepa. I'm a traffic engineer with Street Traffic Studies. And we've submitted a scoping request to Washington County for the traffic study that would be required for this. I've also done a traffic study for the Beaver Creek subdivision, which is a little further up Beaver Creek Road at Emmerich. And I'm working currently on another traffic study for the Reese Farm, which is off Emmerich near Beaver Creek Road. And I'm confident, based on the results we found in those studies, that we will be able to adequately address any traffic issues that might come up as a result of this rezoning. And unless you have any questions, that'll do it for me.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wants, do you have anything further? Otherwise, I'll open this up for questions to you or any of your expert witnesses.
We're open to questions
Okay.
addressed to any of the three of us.
All right, great. Members of the commission, here's an opportunity for you to ask any questions of the applicant. Are there any questions?
This is Dave. I don't have any questions. I think I heard the things that I wanted or needed to hear.
Okay. I will say.
Hey, Clint,
yes,
this is BJ.
BJ. Yep.
I have a question. For staff. With Gaver Meadows being developed over the hill, are there any expected road improvements coming to Beaver Creek out to 40? Do you guys know?
Trying to recall
Jill or
what those
Travis?
plans. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we've got you, Travis.
I'm trying to recall what those plans had in mind. I don't recall that Beaver Creek Road was being upgraded as a part of that, but that was a Frederick Seibert property. I don't know if Trevor is still on the line that he could weigh in on that.
I'm looking. I don't see him in the list anymore. He may have dropped after the previous.
Travis, this is Dave Trostel within Frederick Seibert. I was actually the
Okay.
project manager on that site, and there are no improvements to Beaver Creek, but there will be improvements to Emmerich Road only for that subdivision.
All right, BJ, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I was just curious.
Are there any other questions for the applicant or for staff from members? We do have several members of the public that do have an opportunity to speak after that.
Yeah, Jared Weddle here. I guess question for staff. This property, I have the map from our last meeting right in front of me of the proposed, in the new comp plan, the proposed growth area. And this property is currently proposed to not even be in our urban growth area anymore. So can we talk about that a little bit? Here we are with an applicant wanting to do a zoning change based on a mistake for the last comp plan. And in the comp plan we're currently working on, we were going to take it out of the urban growth area altogether.
Yeah, this is Jill Baker, Director of the Department of Planning and Zoning. We are very well aware of the request that's come through. We had this conversation with the applicant and the attorney, Mr. Wantz, when they came in with this application, that it was going to be our intent to move this property outside of the county's growth area for all the reasons that are basically being stated, that we don't have adequate water and sewer capacity out there. The roads would have to be dramatically improved in order to have any significant development in those areas. So that was definitely one of the parcels that we were looking to take out of the growth area. So they are fully aware of that. That's no secret. They decided that they would like to move forward with this project. And as stated before, Mr. Wantz said, you know, that it could be on well and septic, and should the applicant get the rezoning request and want to go ahead and develop the property, they can. Herein lies the rub when we're dealing with land use plans, is that we move at a slower pace than typical businesses do. So this is going to continue to happen, where we have certain plans, but we cannot put moratoriums on development until we get those plans approved. So we basically move as best we can with the knowledge we have in hand, and we advise people who are looking at the properties what our plans are. And we're just going to have to be ships passing in the night, more or less, is the way this is going to go. So we fully understand the juxtaposition here, that the county, that county staff has already, you know, recommended taking it out of the growth area. Somebody wants to pursue the development. Our comprehensive plan might not get adopted for 2 years, and we can't hold up businesses and development for that. So we'll adjust our plan in these case by case decisions as they come up. But right now, that's how we have to handle it. And like I said, there's no secrets out there. Everybody knows kind of what's going on, and they're aware of it. They just wanted to go ahead and pursue it and try to get their development in before we decided whether to take it out of the growth area or not.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate that, Jill. As mentioned in the beginning, citizens are given the opportunity for comment, and we did have three citizens pre-sign up to speak this evening. The first on that list is Betty Jo Schiffler. Ms. Schiffler, if you'd like to go ahead, you've got 3 minutes.
Okay, yeah, I have a couple questions and some concerns. You did mention the US Lawn and Vinnie's. Now you realize those are both mostly daylight businesses that don't have a whole lot of traffic to them. And I would like to know, where would the access road be that comes out onto Dual Highway? And you're talking about lights coming down there. You're talking about, and there was also a bridge there. And you're talking about coming down from you'd be heading west. You're coming down a hill, and then there's a turn. That does not seem like it would be a safe place to put lights. And then and then I guess you could put it up by where the intersection of Dual Highway, but there again, you've got to turn there. You said there was a traffic study done. Nobody mentioned the Dual Highway, that there was been any kind of a traffic study on the Dual Highway. And when there's an accident on 70, that is backed up could be backed up a mile or more. They are still considering the warehouse up on Howell Road, and we've already been told that will generate 2,000 more trucks a day. And I've been told by the state that our 70 Cloverleaf is way outdated. I guess, and you did mention there was a lot of flood area. And anything that would require fire protection, such as warehouses or hotels or anything like that, it would require fire protection. So I don't understand how you can use well water for that.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments. I appreciate that.
And will there be any answers to any of this?
Well, the applicant has an opportunity for rebuttal after everybody after every member of the public has spoken.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. The next person we have is Hannah Leatherman. Ms. Leatherman.
I can tell you she did not get her link.
Okay, so she's not present this evening.
She's watching by YouTube. I don't think she got her link. They
Okay.
didn't send her a link. She sent it in and requested, but they did not send her a link. She is watching on YouTube.
Okay. Well, if she can hear this, she's welcome to submit, written testimony. We will be considering this next month, so she's got a month to get that in. And that goes for anybody else that may be listening that may not be signed up to speak, but they are more than welcome to submit written testimony. The next person I have on my list is Mike Seikler. I hope I'm saying that right, Mr. Seikler.
Seeker, yeah.
Seeker, I'm sorry.
No problem.
My
I live
eyesight,
I live off Summers Lane. I have 2 properties here. So I was just kind of concerned about the traffic and the access to that property, along with light pollution, all that types of things. This is residential to me, even though it's zoned highway. And I actually have to drop around $60,000 here for my septic system because they're not bringing public utilities out this way. And so I'm just kind of wondering what's going on around here and just getting an idea of what's happening. I'm just a little nervous of something like a truck stop or something like that going in over here. And like I said, if you have accidents around here, I'll just don't see myself ever getting into my house again from the traffic. Sometimes it takes me a few hours to get home and stuff. And it's just going to be a big impact to me, I believe, on this street and my neighbors on this street.
Okay. Anything else? All right, well, thank you for your comments. Those were the 3 that we had that would pre-signed up. Is there anybody else on the call this evening that had desired to speak on this rezoning meeting? Hearing none, there is an opportunity for the applicant to provide rebuttal. We have 5 minutes allocated for that. Mr. Wantz, if you'd like.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I want to make sure I'm not talking to myself here. Yes. I'd like to first address some of the topics raised by Jill Baker. And we did have a fairly lengthy meeting to discuss the possibilities of using the HI zone to facilitate development suitable to the HI, to the highway interchange, but lacking public water and sewer. This seemed to be a good fit. There was no question or controversy in our discussion back in June with the planning director that mistake was not evident. So it was, I think, agreed. Sure, Jill would recall this. It was agreed by all of us that this was a zoning mistake. The applicant has the capability and is glad to propose road improvements. That's part and parcel to the development of a site of 130 acres. Significantly, those road improvements are easily accomplished and within the budget anticipated for the acquisition and development of this property for some HI use, because we own a title along the part of the road that will be affected by the development, and can widen that and provide buffers equal to or even greater than those required by our zoning regulations. As far as the traffic patterns and improvements that will be required, we're willing to do whatever SHA, State Highway Administration, asks us and tells us to do. The road improvements are completely in their discretion. With regard to buffering, screening, use of the site to cause it to be compatible with any property nearby or not so nearby, that'll be determined by how the Planning Commission addresses and provides support and recommendations at the site plan level. Frankly, we don't know what the development of the property would be, but we think it presents so many opportunities given its adjacency to the interstate highway, its inclusion in the within the urban growth area, that we're as interested to find out what the best use of the property would be as the commission certainly is. It's not exactly certain what the currently drafted comprehensive plans will do as they pass through the public information process and are given consideration by the Board of County Commissioners. So we're relying on this plan. Unfortunately, it's 19 years old, but I would think that if interest is shown in the development of this property in an HI type use, that that would be taken into account in any revised comprehensive plan. I don't think that having interest in the development would support a reduction in the in the urban growth area in this region of the county. There were some questions and comments raised about things that are characteristic of almost any development in the HI zone, and I'll just touch on those briefly. There were questions about whether traffic studies were done by Mr. Nalepa that included the dual highway. Certainly it did. He's been working up and down there. The other project's Emmert Road that's just down the dual highway. If you'd like, I can have him comment on that, and anyone's welcome to call or seek information directly. It doesn't have to be through this forum. My name and address are in the phone book, and I can refer you to the consultants as well. There are some limitations on the property that were commented on by the wetlands, but there's a lot of usable land on the property for HI type development without public utilities. Fire protection is certainly a consideration in any development of this nature, and the property, I would assume, would be served by Funkstown as the first responder, and there are techniques for addressing fires of this type that we will be discussing with them, depending on what use the property is ultimately dedicated to. There were comments about Summers Lane. I would think that State Highway would require us to improve the road between on the segment of Beaver Creek Road between Summers Lane and the intersection at the dual highway, and including addressing that curve in the road to accommodate any traffic congestion or safety issues. Light pollution is always addressed by the Planning Commission with downlights, vegetative screening, and buffering. I think that would not be an issue. And I think that's all.
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Wantz. I appreciate your presentation this evening. I appreciate everybody else's time regarding both these cases. We will take this case under advisement and discuss it next month at our regularly scheduled meeting and make a recommendation at that time to the county commissioners. Having said that, we will now move on to our regularly scheduled county planning commission meeting. The first item on that agenda are the minutes, January 10, 2022 planning commission regular meeting minutes. Are there any questions, concerns, changes to those? Hearing none, I would be looking for a motion.
I'll move
You just move past that. I got on there and talked for a while.
You did?
Yeah.
Can we mute, please? I'm not sure who that is, but if they could please mute. All right, so
Yeah, Dave, I made a motion to approve.
we've got a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second, this is Jeff.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. The next item we have under new business, we have site plans. The first item there is Roland on Holdings LLC. This is SP-21-036, a site plan for proposed tractor trailer gravel storage lot located on the south end of French Lane. The current zoning is highway interchange, and Lisa Kelly is the planner. Good evening, Lisa.
Good evening. I'm assuming everybody can hear me.
Yep, we've got you.
Okay, great. As mentioned, presented here tonight for your review is a site plan for Roland on Holdings LLC. Subject site is situated at the south end of French Lane, east of Greencastle Pike and north of Interstate 70. Zoning is highway interchange. The owner is proposing to construct a tractor trailer gravel storage lot on his 5.60 acre parcel. There will be one access point for this use onto French Lane. It is currently an undeveloped open lot. The site will be in use 7 days a week, 24 hours per day. There will be no employees, lighting, signage, public water, and sewer for this site. Bioretention ponds will be constructed to handle stormwater. Forestation requirements have been met previously with forest retention easement plats area that were approved in 2000 under the name of Hunter's Green. All the needed approvals have been received by our office. Adam Hager is the consultant for the developer. He is here online with us as well if you have questions of Adam or myself. I don't have anything else to add.
This is basically just an empty lot that they're going to park trailers on.
Yep, pretty much, yes.
Yes, Randy, it looks like there's tons of tractor trailers there now. If this is going to be a storage lot, I personally wouldn't see a problem with it.
Right?
We actually just built on the lot right beside that for Brad Fulton. So this would be the exact same use right beside that. So
certainly have no problem with it.
Yeah, I don't see any issue with this whatsoever. So aside from any additional comments or discussion, I'd be looking for a motion.
I'll move to approve.
This is Denny. I'll second.
We've got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? So carried. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you very much.
Sure, no problem. The next item under site plans this evening, we have sheet store number 145. This is SP-21-031. This is a site plan for the proposed site renovation of sheets store 145, located at 13531 Pennsylvania Avenue. The current zoning is planned business general. And Scott Stottlemyre is our planner this evening. Good evening, Scott.
Good evening, everyone. This is Scott Stottlemyre, planner for Washington County. Presented as a site plan for sheets at the corner of Long Meadow Road and Pennsylvania Avenue. This is a site renovation for an existing sheets. Proposed is a new 6,077 square foot sheet store to replace the current sheet store at 5,507 square feet, as well as removing and replacing all fuel dispensers and islands. The site will continue to be accessible from Pennsylvania Avenue as well as Longmeadow Road. The site previously had 40 parking spots and will now offer 43. Public water will be provided by the city and sewer will be provided by the county. Hours of operation at the store will be 7 days a week, 24 hours per day. Lighting will be pole and building mounted. Signage will be building mounted and utilize existing pole signs. Existing pole mounted signs will be upgraded. The existing car wash will remain, but will receive an updated facade. All agency approvals have been received on this one. And myself and project manager David Trossel are from Frederick Cyber are here if there are any questions.
All right, any questions from members of the commission?
Hey, Dave Trossel, they're taking, Dave, this is
Go ahead,
BJ.
DJ.
They're taking the pumps out in the front, aren't they? Is that what they're doing, Dave? The ones that face Longmeadow Road and shifting the building forward, is that what they're doing?
That is correct.
Yeah.
There's two gas canopies currently. One in the front and one to the side as shown there. The building will be shifted forward. A drive-through will be added and the canopies will just be on the west side of the building.
So they're going to have to completely shut down and tear down and build new.
That is correct. But one thing they will do through the whole process is the access lane that goes to the Martin store will remain open at all time.
Okay, that's good to know. Any other questions from members of the board? Yeah, I don't have any. I mean, I think this is just I honestly think having the fuel pumps in this configuration that's proposed will be a benefit. It can be a little hairy sometimes going through there as cars pulling in and out of fuel pumps on two sides. So I think this is,
I'll make a motion to approve.
we've got a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Got a second. Second from Denny. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
No problem. Thank you. Good luck. Next on our agenda this evening, we have forest conservation. There are two items there. The first item is Western Maryland Parkway Warehouse. This is GP-21-024. A variance request to remove 3 specimen trees from property located along the northwest side of Western Maryland Parkway, and a request to utilize the payment in lieu of planning method to meet forest conservation requirements. The current zoning here is highway interchange, and the planner is Travis. Keeping you busy tonight, Travis.
Yes, all right. Back again here, Travis Allen, Comprehensive Planner for Planning and Zoning. As stated, there is 2 requests here to meet their forest mitigation as a part of a grading plan for a warehouse and office space. Again, they're looking to satisfy about 3/4 of their planting requirement through payment in lieu of, and also to remove 3 specimen trees. Site plan review is also underway at this time. However, the issue of the specimen tree removal has to be decided before their grading begins occurring. So that's why we're here tonight with the grading plan. As you'll likely recall, the payment in lieu of request relates to the Forest Conservation Ordinance, Article 10, Preferred Sequence of Mitigation. That part of the ordinance describes techniques ranging from on-site and planting or retention all the way down to the payment in lieu of option being typically the least preferred option. So if they're deviating from those higher techniques in the sequence, justification is provided by their qualified professional. In terms of the specimen tree variance, specimen trees again are prioritized by Article 8 of our ordinance. Therefore, the removal requires a variance under Article 15. The criteria for variance is, again, the applicant must demonstrate the conditions of hardship that necessitate the removal of these trees, and also that their removal won't adversely affect water quality. In support of the request, you have my memo summarizing things. You have the forest conservation plan, which Megan has up here on the screen, showing the intended specimen trees to be removed, as well as the location of the easement. And you also have 2 justification letters from the qualified professional in your agenda materials. Looking at both of these requests, like a lot of these developments that we've seen here lately in terms of forest conservation requests, the rub is really that the size and dimension of the building, in addition to space that they need for utilities, parking, and stormwater management requirements, essentially eat up the entire parcel. You can also see there on the screen that this particular site has a bit of an unusual parcel shape, and most of the existing forest is located right along the road frontage on West Washington Street. So it makes retaining any of that forest to any significant degree pretty difficult. You can see along the eastern side of the parcel, all forest that is not proposed for clearing is intended to be put in a permanent easement on site, and they do intend to retain 1 out of the 4 specimen trees within that permanent easement. There isn't any additional room where they could really plant on site, given all the things they have to do here. So the request is before you here tonight to utilize the payment in lieu of method for, again, about 3/4 of their planting requirement, and to remove 3 specimen trees.
Okay, any questions for Travis from members of the commission? Hearing none, I'd be looking for a motion one way or the other.
This is Dave. I'll make a motion to approve.
All right, I'm looking for a second.
This is BJ. I'll second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Thank you, Travis. And we've got another forest conservation item. This is Chris and Dusky Rankin, Bivens Estates, Lot 21. This is S-21-054, a request to vacate part of an existing forest easement and to convert to the payment in lieu of planting for property located at 17000 Bivens Lane. The current zoning is agricultural rural, and the planner is Travis yet again.
Okay, last time you'll hear from me tonight. Travis Allen with Planning and Zoning. Again, this is a bit of an unusual request, just in that there's a number of overlapping land use considerations that are in play here as a part of the request. So we felt it best to bring this before the Planning Commission. Principally, what they're requesting to do is to vacate a 1/4 acre of an existing forest easement on this lot as a part of septic relocation, leaving 0.86 acres in the forest easement still on site. This is a part of a subdivision replat for Lot 21 of the Homer Bivens subdivision recorded in 2003. So we kind of have 3 different overlapping land use considerations that are coming into play as a part of this septic relocation. We have the integrity of the forest easement that's on site. We have the potential existence of a intermittent stream buffer as a part of the hydrology of the site. And then you also have the specific location of the septic area as that is regulated by stream buffer regulations, floodplain regulations, and the consideration for wet or hydric soils, principally all these being regulated under the subdivision ordinance under amongst other land use regulations here in the county. So within those 3 considerations, the forest conservation ordinance prioritizes the retention of existing forest within an intermittent stream buffer. The subdivision ordinance requires that buffers be provided for either perennial or intermittent streams, and septic systems are generally prohibited within intermittent or perennial stream buffers and are typically not located in hydric soils or soils that are wet for various reasons. So what you have in your agenda packet besides the subdivision replat itself is also an email from the Soil Conservation District. They came to a preliminary conclusion that there was an intermittent stream on this property that required a buffer. However, after looking further at the site and considering some changes that have occurred upstream, they revised their determination and now feel at this point that that intermittent stream does not flow to the extent that it did previously. And so the buffer they initially recommended, they believe is no longer necessarily needed for this parcel. Another thing that has changed from the time that the forest easement was first put onto this property, the floodplain maps have changed, in various parts of the country, but also including the effect on this property. Formerly, that forest easement covered a portion of the property in the northern half that was almost entirely covered by floodplain. With the revision of the floodplain maps, however, the floodplain is now located off-site, and so between the determination that there is not an intermittent stream on the property and the removal of the floodplain from the northern part of this property, you just don't really have the same sensitive area protection considerations that the forest easement was kind of designed and put there for originally, now that some of those things have been removed. So because this, from what I understand with the health department's recommendation to put the septic system specifically in this area, because this was already a recorded lot of record, they kind of had to find a way to make this a buildable lot still, and based upon the soils that were in the existing location of the septic area, those areas would no longer perk, and they determined that this was one of the only areas where that septic system, through alternate designs, could perk and could make this a buildable lot. So kind of a lot of overlapping factors, none of them ideal under perfect circumstances, but I pretty much just trying to make the best of the specific environmental constraints of this site, and therefore leading to the request to remove a small portion of the forest easement and convert it into a payment in lieu of payment into the county's Forest Conservation Fund. Ed Schreiber, I believe, is on the call here tonight. If he wants to elaborate any further on some of the design of the septic area or some of the considerations that went into the decision here to locate the septic area, I'll certainly allow him that, and certainly Jill can step in too if she has anything else to add. But again, the request is to vacate a portion of the forest easement and to convert it into PIL payment.
Good evening, everybody. This is Ed Schreiber with Frederick Cyber Associates. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we've got you.
Okay. Travis, you did an excellent job in describing the history of the property. Just very briefly, the current owners, Chris and Dusky Rankin, they purchased the property back in 2009, I believe it was. And the platted septic area at that point in time was very close to where it is shown on lot 20. However, it was on lot 21, outside of the forest conservation easement. They had since decided to purchase an existing house elsewhere in Washington County, so they really didn't have a need for this lot any longer. Decided to sell it within this past year. And the purchasers did their due diligence with the health department, and the health department required additional perk testing be done, as what we're finding out in many different areas of the county and lots in Washington County. Even if you have an existing septic area, if you go to get a building permit, the health department is going to require additional testing. So lo and behold, from what the owners had originally thought was going to be just an in-ground trench septic system, turned out after numerous rounds of testing that they're now going to have to do a full-blown sand mound system. In essence, adding about $30,000 just for the septic system. And so at that point, once we discovered that the plat had, or the septic area had to be within the forest conservation easement, we went through all the iterations with the clients to describe to them what had to be done in paying in lieu of to remove that portion of the forest conservation easement and pay in lieu of at that point in time. And then some of the subsequent issues that popped up along the way with the intermittent stream have raised their head, and that's kind of what we're addressing now. If you can see where the intermittent stream is, it actually shows up on towards the right-hand side of the property. Yeah, that would be correct, right where the north arrow is. That is actually, that whole lot to the right of the green is a stormwater management facility. So that stream has changed considerably since it was originally developed, or since it was originally undeveloped and in its natural state. Again, there is a stormwater management pond there at this point in time. And as Travis mentioned earlier, the Soil Conservation Service has looked at this and determined that because there is existing floodplain very nearby and the existing forest conservation easement, and due to the fact that the health department is more or less dictating that the septic area can only be in this location, that with this particular instance, they're okay with allowing a septic area within what would have been a stream buffer. And that's all I have to offer. If you have any questions.
Are there any questions for Ed, for members of the commission? This looked like quite the effort to find a solution.
Yeah, you could say that. The owners weren't real happy when they found out everything that they had to do, but
Bet not. I know I wouldn't be. Are there any questions from anybody on this? If not, I'd be looking for a motion.
Johnny, make a motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So carried. Good luck, Ed, and I wish them well on this. It's quite an undertaking.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Next, we have under other business, Black Rock PUD, a determination of a minor versus major amendment to the approved concept plan. And Jill Baker is the reason my email blew up today. Good evening, Jill. You're not the reason. This is the reason.
It's okay. So, as the members may recall, several months ago, the applicants or the owners for Black Rock submitted an application for a major change in their development plan for the Black Rock PUD. What you see here on the screen is the original Black Rock PUD that was approved back in 2002. There was one minor change. I neglected to send that, but the minor changes in that section where close to Sasha Boulevard, where they show the community center and those things, that was converted into 8 single-family lots. I think that was done, I can't remember the exact date, but that was done as a minor subdivision, or as a minor change to the PUD. And like I said, several months ago, an application came in for a major change where the applicant was seeking to increase the residential density from 595 units to 1,148 units. That has since gone before the Board of County Commissioners in a public hearing, and a formal vote was taken on February 1st to deny that request. In response to that, the applicant has come back with a new revision that you'll see there on the screen now, effectively going back to the original density and number of units being 595 units. However, they've opted to squeeze that down to a portion of the property as you see on the screen there. So what they're requesting this evening is a decision by the Planning Commission as to whether or not they believe this to be a major or a minor change to the original development plan that is currently in place. I will say that as staff, we have looked at this and don't feel as though this rises to the level of a major change when you look at the zoning ordinance and it talks about how to define that major change. There's no change in the total number of units requested. There is no change in the overall density requirements. The types of residential units being proposed are pretty equal to the previous the currently approved development plan. The amenities being proposed are comparable to the amenities on the current approved development plan. It's just really, we look at this more like a cluster development more than anything. So what would happen, just to be very clear about this, is that as these phases of development will come in the subdivision phase, a portion of that parcel to the left would be set aside as basically open space. And what that does is then offsets the density requirements for the residential development. So again, that's really what you're looking at here. There's really no significant changes in overall density. What you're looking at is a change in how clustered the development is. I don't have anything further to add to this. I don't know if you have any questions, or I'll open it up, guys.
Yeah, let's open it up to members of the commission for questions for Jill.
I don't have questions, but I do have commentary whenever we get to that.
Yeah, okay, and we can, you know, if there are no questions, we can have discussion. We certainly
Right.
are.
Clint, I do have a
discussion.
question.
Sure.
This is Jeff Semler. So, Joe, if I'm clear, as we build out A, B, C, blah, 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 then we continue to shift across that to the left and guarantee. And my concern is that this is one bite of the apple, and then I don't know, 10 years from now, 2 days from now, we come back and we want to develop the rest of this quote unquote open space.
Yeah, that's been the number one concern from most people who look at this. That area would be locked up as open space reserve. It would have to be reserved that way to meet the density of this development. If at any point in time they would want to come back and then develop that property, it would go through another rezoning case, because again, it's not, they would no longer have a by right to develop that property. It would be, that land has already been consumed as part of the open space requirements, and therefore has no by right development. They would have to come back through a public hearing process to further develop that property. So I'm not going to say that they won't or they can't, but they would have to come back through a public hearing process to do so.
And I am correct that the original plan was voted down by the planning commission, but up by the county commissioners. Is that correct?
The very original subdivision was recommended for denial by the planning commission and was ultimately approved by the Board of County Commissioners, correct?
Okay, so when we look at a major versus minor, are we bound by the planning commission's decision or by the county commissioner's decision?
You are bound by what the existing development plan is today. It's approved, it's by right. Whether you like it, love it, or hate it, it's there, and they have the right to do that. So what you are evaluating, whether or not what is approved today that you see on screen now is a major or minor change to what they want to do in the new plan.
Thank
Hey,
you.
Jill, how many lots are remaining in the original approved PUD? And how many lots is this creating? How many dwelling units is this creating? If you compared the two.
There has been no development of the currently approved development plan. There are, I believe it's an 8-lot subdivision that's been approved. Nothing's been built. But there was 595 on the original plan, and there's 595 on this plan.
So say that again, the original plan from however many years ago that the county commissioners approved had 595 units on it?
Correct.
And this plan has 595 units on it?
Correct.
The difference is the original plan was using this whole parcel of land, and this plan is using, give or take, half of it.
Correct.
So you're increasing the density within the plan.
They're not increasing the density because they have to.
Well,
look up
they're putting them all closer
yes.
together, smaller lots, multifamily, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
Yes.
40 years ago, I was an athlete, weighed 165 pounds in top condition, great shape. 40 years later, I'm 65. I sit around on my butt, my belly's gotten bigger. I still weigh 165 pounds, but there's been a major change. To me, this is clearly a major redesign and needs to go to a public hearing. It's a major redesign. And let me correct some of the things that were said earlier. I can tell you exactly when that minor change was made last year. It was made in March during the meeting that I missed, where you guys nominated me and voted me in as vice president. That's when it happened, and it got approved. And when this other change came around, I had all sorts of people come to me and tell me all of the problems. There were clearly ulterior motives for that minor change. It wasn't as simple as it was, and it created issues for the homeowners association. And you're welcome to talk to them about that. But I've had people reach out to me already about this, and my opinion is any change in this subdivision, given the controversy that's going through here, anything should go to a public hearing. Now, this may be a wonderful change, and maybe it would be the best thing that ever happened. But regardless, it can't be sneaked through. It needs to be laundered out in a public hearing, period.
I agree, Dave. This is a major change.
It's a major change. How can you say it's not? Just because it's the same number of houses or whatever? Well, big deal. We could do a 50-story skyscraper, and it's the same number of units. Well, it's a major change. It just is. How can you not see that?
Clint, this is Jeff Summer. I'd like to ask a couple more questions.
Absolutely, Jeff. Go right ahead.
To Jill in particular. So when this came up the last time, regardless of how many units it was or whatever, our concern was traffic and water. How does this change that?
It doesn't. Basically, what's going to happen is that they're going to have to go through the site plan phase again. They still have to address the issues that go along with whatever water issues that are out there today. They will still have to deal with the traffic issues, obviously at a lower intensity level. Again, so we're going back to the original development plan. It's going to be the same number of trips per day that it was before. It's going to be the same number of students that it was before. It's just kind of scrunched down into a smaller area. So they still have to deal with all of those issues, but the bottom line is whether they do it with this development plan or the current development plan, it's already been approved and they can move forward with it in either way. So it's just a question of, you know, in what format is it squished down in a cluster version or spread out over the whole parcel?
Hey, Clint, I'm going to make a remark if I could, Randy.
Yeah, go right ahead.
I'm not going to vote on this, obviously, because it looks like it could be headed back. I don't know. We'll see what happens here. I guess just food for thought, which sort of bothers me a little bit. And I'm like, it could be the greatest thing ever. It could be the worst thing ever. That remaining land you see on the left there, a board of county commissioners said 595 units were okay years ago. I assume before I was around. And and the planning commission obviously agreed with it. What I'm concerned about this time around, the board of county commissioners didn't like a major chain being 1,100 some units or anything else, and the planning commission didn't like it. I guess the food for thought is, what if a year from now, when there could be more different county commissioners, different planning members, would they jump through the hoops and be able, against a whole lot of people's wishes, do what Jill said's possible and develop that left side and come back? You know, so I think that's food for thought, and I'm not pro or con at this point. I'll wait to hear it if it gets back to me. That's just something I'm thinking out loud about.
That's clearly a possible motivation.
This is Danny. I think it's a major change. It needs to be looked at.
All right. Well, I mean, certainly, you know, based on what I'm hearing, it sounds like we're probably ready to take a vote on this. So I'd be looking for a motion.
This is Danny. Motion that this be considered a major change and has to go to a public hearing.
Is there a second?
This
Matt
is Danny.
Powell.
Second.
I hear a second. I'm sorry. Somebody was saying something else.
Yeah, Clint, this is, Matt Powell has his hand up. Is it appropriate to call on him, or do we just continue to go?
No,
here
we're
he
gonna
is.
now. There's no public input for this. That
Gotcha.
would be if there's a public information meeting, something like that, where there's public input. But this is for the planning commission only here tonight.
Very good.
So we have a motion and a second on the floor for this to be considered a major amendment and go to public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. All right, Jill. So we've got that action taken on that one.
Hey, please note that I didn't vote. Randy.
Oh, yes,
abstained.
I'm sorry. Yes, and I did know that. I'm sorry I did not say that for the record, Randy, but Randy Wagner did abstain from that vote. Next, under other business on our agenda this evening, we have update of staff approvals. Jennifer's got that. Good evening, Jennifer.
Good evening, everyone. Jennifer Kinzer, Deputy Director of Planning and Zoning. First, I want to take a minute to let the commission members know that I'll be providing this monthly update now instead of Rebecca Calamer due to last year's reorganization and some shifting of job duties among staff. So from now on, moving forward, you'll hear this from me instead of Rebecca. But tonight, included in your packet is the development activity for December of 2021. You may notice that the activity in December was a little bit slower than it's been pretty much throughout all of 2021, but that's kind of typical due to the holiday season. And I can guarantee you that since January 1st, activity has picked back up. We are busy processing plans. Does anybody have any questions?
I do not. Anybody else? I mean, for being slower, you were still pretty busy.
Yes.
It sure looks that way to me, at least. All right, hearing no further questions from members, I'll go ahead to the last item on our agenda this evening. We have a comprehensive plan update. Jill.
Good evening, members. Again, Jill Baker, Director of the Department of Planning and Zoning. This is typically where we start talking some more about the comp plan and where we are and updating it. I unfortunately have not made any progress since the last meeting. in terms of getting the information together. I will say this, I think we're going to be better off from this point forward, working in work sessions or workshops, and focusing our time directly on the comp plan issues themselves, since we're going to start getting into the meat and potatoes of this whole thing. The information that I presented at the last meeting, I feel like I kind of hit you guys a little too cold with that. What I'm going to be presenting in the upcoming meetings, first and foremost, are giving you an idea of what our county's population projections are, what our existing land use calculations, what kind of density that's going to create. We'll talk a little bit about the medium range growth area boundaries and the limitations that go along with that. And I think that, you know, the idea of which properties are going to be in and which properties are going to be out of the growth area was a little bit premature, but I wanted you guys to at least have that information in hand, knowing the direction that we are headed. So what I plan on doing is sending out some emails here in the coming days of dates for workshop meetings, so we can focus a little bit more primarily on comp plan things. You can see the meeting's going a little long tonight, and if development keeps trending the way it is, we have a feeling that you're going to have a lot of late nights. So we'd rather just kind of break this up and give you the opportunity to really digest what we're going to be talking about. So unfortunately, I don't have any additional information. Jeff, I will say that you had mentioned breaking those maps down into section maps. We have done that. We will be presenting those in the near future. And so that you can get a better feel for exactly where that boundary line is going to be shifting. So that's my very brief update, is that I don't have anything to update other than we're going to start setting up workshop meetings with you guys. So be on the lookout for those emails.
Okay, I mean, and that actually makes some sense, right? I mean, if we can just dedicate some time together to focus just on the comp plan, I think we'll make better headway that way than tacking it on to the end of our regular meetings. You know, previously it's been okay, you know, as we had, you know, some shorter meetings, but you're right, it seems like things are you know, reverting to those days where we would have these hour and a half, 2 hour plus meetings, and then to have this on top of it kind of gets us a little drained and less focused. So it makes some sense to do that. Keep in mind, I think we already have scheduled 2 meetings for March. Not saying we can't also have, you know, some time in there for comp plan, but just be aware from a schedule perspective, we're committed to 2 already.
Yep.
Other than that, are there any questions or comments from members of the commission? Hearing none, I need a motion for adjournment.
So moved, Clint. This is Jeff.
All right, we've got a motion. And a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thanks, everybody. I certainly appreciate your efforts and commitment. These virtual meetings are much more difficult than when we were in person. So I appreciate everyone's hard work to make them go as smoothly as possible.
Are we in person next month?
You know, that's a good question, Joel. Are we in person next month? Do we know?
We'll know more probably tomorrow. That I think the commissioners are going to discuss whether or not we're going to go back to in-person stuff. If I had to guess, I would say we're moving toward in-person. Our positivity rates have come down significantly. As long as those continue to trend down, I would say, yes, we could probably start looking at in-person meetings in March.
All right. Well, let's hope we go that direction. All right, everyone. Thanks. I appreciate it. Have a good night. And